Hi, I'm Graham.
And I'm Steph.
We are Crystal Street Comics, and welcome to the first episode of the comic Catwalk. A new show me and Steph are going to be doing
Yeah.
on a weekly basis for you guys, and we're going to be breaking down. There's a lot of shows out there that break down comic book characters' histories, and they talk about their past and what all they've done, but we're going to focus on something more specific, and that's their appearance. So we're going to break down individual costumes throughout time, maybe how their time period was influenced by, or how I should say the costume was influenced by the time that they were being drawn in. I just think it's an interesting subject that hasn't been looked at yet. So we're going to give that a go. If you don't know Steph here helps out at Crystal Street Comics. She mostly helps with our PR a lot. She helps to get our name out there, helps with the Twitters and the Facebooks, and so, but I thought for a show like this, I thought if I just came on, or if it's me and Tannen talking about costumes, especially when we get into some of the female costumes, it's going to come off a little creepy. So I thought a female perspective would be helpful. And plus, if you've watched Crystal Street Comics and Thoughts from Crystal Street enough, you know I have no fashion sense. I have about 5 shirts.
I don't know if you'd call what I have fashion sense.
I'd say you're a lot more stylish than me.
Okay.
So that's what the show's about. We hope you enjoy. And for the first one, I think we picked a good character because we picked somebody who's got a lot of varied looks. We're going to go with Marvel's First Lady of the X-Men, Jean Grey.
Absolutely.
Now, real quick, I don't want to go too deep into lore on these because there's plenty of other shows out there where you could go find out Jean Grey's history. But Jean was a founding member of the X-Men. Made her first appearance in X-Men #1 in 1963. She's a telekinetic telepath who later gets inhabited, I should say, by the Phoenix Force, one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe.
Yep. I think it's kind of cool that they gave one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe in the 60s to a chick.
Yes, that's 70s for the
70s, yeah.
70s for the Phoenix Force. But yes, that was a really cool twist, making her essentially one of the most powerful beings, and of course later twisting that into one of the most evil powerful beings in the Dark Phoenix.
Absolutely.
She's also resurrected more times than the Winchesters.
That's a lot if you don't know.
And that's a lot if you. So I might be using 2 references you don't know, but she respawns a lot.
Sometimes it's a weird respawn too.
Yeah. So it's. But I guess that's comic books. That's the wonderful thing about comic books is anybody can come back unless you're Bucky until recently.
Yep. Sorry, Bucky.
Well, it's Winter Soldier now, so he's all good.
Yeah.
But for a long time, the rule in comic books was everybody can be resurrected except Bucky. So, but Bucky's back now, and he's a happy guy, and he's welcome back. So let's dive right into it, and let's start. We're going to do these as chronologically as possible. For the main looks, now there will be some offshoots we'll cover at the end that jump around a little bit timeline wise. But if we do something wrong, if I get a timeline issue wrong, tell me in the comments below.
Let us know. I'll respond to you. I promise.
So the original look was a uniform, a blue. All the original X-Men wore a blue and yellow uniform, and it was basically a full body cover. And Jean's was even a full mask.
Yep.
Which is it's kind of a novelty in comic books anymore for the mask. I think since Iron Man came out in the movies and said, "I am Iron Man," the secret identity has died.
Yeah.
And so the idea of the mask is
well, I think gone. I don't think it's long gone. I think it's just something that this generation is exploring differently.
Yeah. I miss it. I miss the mask and the, that way you could go out in public later. But, what do I know? I guess we got to be.
Damn it, Tony Stark.
Yeah, damn it, Tony. What are you doing? So the original look was, it was very blocky. Now, of course, as Kirby drew it, Kirby didn't draw the most voluptuous women, and it was his art style at the time. But the costume had a simple elegance. It was blue and yellow, maybe not the most attractive looking thing, but
I didn't think it was ugly though.
No. That's the wonderful thing about Kirby. He took very simple looks and just.
And hers kind of had the yellow that went, on the upper thigh, and it was the yellow, almost like a tank suit with the blue underneath.
Yeah. So it's an interesting first look, and we got to remember this is '63, so.
And her hair is very 63.
Yeah.
Like very early 60s, long hair.
In a ponytail.
Yeah.
It's very, you're coming out of the 50s
Mm-hmm.
at this point. Two white picket fence, 2.5 kids, all that shabazz. But what's cool is I think her first transition in costume.
Mm-hmm.
Because as we go into the late 60s, the early 70s, we get what I call the skirt Jean Grey or the go-go, or as you really well put
Yeah,
out,
Nancy Sinatra looking.
the Nancy Sinatra. I mean, that's what it is. It is a 70s go-go look.
Well,
And
it's a late 60s go-go, like that probably came out in early 70s.
Um, and what I like about this is it is very telling of the time. She's becoming a woman, and at
Mm-hmm.
that time, a very free and liberated woman, which
Right,
was
which was I mean, like that was dressing her like that in contrast to the original first edition. I mean, just having her, just even showing the thigh that she was showing, and the flirtatious boots, and the cut of it was a wide V-neck cut on the dress. I mean, honestly, that was, I mean, such a departure from the original costume. But at the time, it was women just, it seemed like, I mean, to most of us who've studied history, it seems like in a 2 year time span, women were just getting naked. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So,
yeah. I mean, it's you think of the old 40s and 50s bathing suits almost, where it was
mm-hmm.
complete coverage, and now all of a sudden there's this thing called
The
bikini, and it's like, what is that? And this, in comic book terms, is doing the same thing, and it works because the X-Men were always counterculture, because the
Mm-hmm.
X-Men were Stan's way of talking race
Mm-hmm.
at a time when it was hard to talk about race in any given way. He used the mutants to do that, and the mutants also represent a counterculture, if
Yep.
you will. And putting Jean in this look, it was really smart, because at the same time too, Cyclops kept a very similar look that he had before. He was still the ultra kind of conservative look. He didn't necessarily go along with her into this 70s transition, and it's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's probably around about the time that some trouble started.
Trouble comes a little bit later in the 80s when we introduce a certain short Canadian, but more on him later. So during the 70s, as we had mentioned before, though, the Phoenix Force comes into effect, and Jean gets her Phoenix costume. Comes in two flavors that I know of: the green and the red. The red symbolizing the Dark Phoenix, and the green,
but both of them have the same symbol on them.
The gold Phoenix symbol. I've seen a white variation. I don't know if that's actually a thing, or if that's maybe just from video games or something like that. So I don't know, but it did take her back, and almost from this point on, with a few exceptions,
very few exceptions,
Jean is a very conservatively dressed, for a superhero character.
We need to put that bar in there.
Yeah.
For a female superhero.
Yeah.
Very conservatively dressed.
I understand. It's tights. You get to see her full form. You get to see her breasts. I mean, with the exception of, it's just a layer of green that's over them. I understand that, but that's comic books. They're tights. Yeah.
It looks like latex body paint.
Yeah.
You're going to get that in comic books.
It is what that is. So we will use.
She's about as conservatively dressed for a female superhero as you can get.
As it gets. So we're going to put that moniker in there as it gets. Again, it's a very simple costume. It's almost solid colored. I don't know. There's something in that simplicity, though, that it's very recognizable. I mean, I can tell instantly that's a Phoenix.
Yep.
That's a Phoenix look.
Well, and Marvel was really smart to do that. Absolutely really smart to do that, because they knew that you were going to have people transitioning from reading, maybe even in this era, it's a father handing down his comic books to his son, or his daughter, if the case may be.
They were maturing too, because you got to figure, the kids in the 60s who were reading those, maybe you're a 12er, and now in the late 70s, you're entering young adulthood. But if you're still reading comics, you need something that appeals to you as well. So
well, and the X-Men being kind of there as the counterculture reference, that's always perfect for that age group. It doesn't matter what time period it is.
So after the Phoenix, she does die during this storyline. She comes back at some point, and again, I'm not going to go into the lore because there's a lot there.
There are lots of places you can find that.
Yeah, trust us, lots of places to find the just type in history of Jean Grey after you're done watching this on YouTube. I bet you'll find 8 videos. So she comes back, and they form X Factor, which is a reformation of the original X-Men, Um, and they all apparently decided they needed to let you know they were X-Men.
Because it was a giant
They
X.
all wore giant X's on themselves. Uh, Again, she has a green and a red variation here.
Still my least favorite variation.
Yeah, I don't like this X Factor costume, uh, but it is noticeably the start of her more 80s look
Yes, it
because
is.
her
Hair
hair
just gets nuts.
is massive.
This was what, 86?
I can't. Yeah, 86. That sounds right. And there were perms for days on Jean Grey.
Oh
My
God.
God. So much perm.
No, make it stop. No, no, no. Told me tell you no.
So that look stays around for a while until we get to what I know as my first real. When I think of Jean Grey, my first thought goes to the X-Men cartoon.
Which, mine does as well, and I think many people our age. Yeah. I mean, that's really.
When I think Jean, that's the look in mind. And this is also a look made very famous by Jim Lee, the X-Men #1, which is the best-selling comic book of all time, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
He designed that Cyclops that we're all used to, the yellow bandana. Wolverine changed to blue. That's when we get the yellow and blue look. And Jean got a real radical change.
Yeah,
it's this tannish color. It's a weird open face, but
she's got a visor that goes around her ponytail.
Yeah,
she's got a ponytail.
It's this weird look. Now she has a ponytail in the cartoon, but in the comic books, as far as I can tell, her hair was not as big. It was not 80s big, but it went to 90s, but still kind of.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was that time in the early 90s where you were transitioning from the, oh my God, everybody has the huge perm, to, okay, we want to kind of mellow this out.
But it is an interesting look. It's got the kind of the navy blue in the middle, and that.
The way that I think of her hair is like that Kathy Ireland swimsuit edition.
Yes, that is great. Kathy Ireland hair. That's perfect for Jean Grey in that 90s.
This is why I'm doing this.
And this is why I need her. So, and that's the look that I knew for a long time, was that 90s look. And then something happened that I am still to this day, as much as I may not like, when you look back at it, it's not the best movie ever made, but X-Men 1 rolls along, the actual live action movie. And we
the start of the superhero movie franchise.
Right. It's the one that proved superhero movies could be lucrative. They did a lot wrong. And one of the things they did is they took the lovely Miss Famke Janssen and they put her in black leather or whatever it's supposed to be. And it's a good tight look. I like to see Famke Janssen looking like that.
Yeah.
But
I do too.
Because of its popularity, something bled into comic books that I didn't really care for, especially in the X-Men franchise.
Marvel does that, though.
Yeah, yes, they do. Marvel is known to bleed from the movies. But this bleed I didn't like. And that was almost the entire X-Men universe went to this really bland black and yellow. It took away originality from any of the characters. Because I got to know them in the 90s when they all had their very distinct looks, to see them revert to these cookie cutter looks was kind of
really depressing, actually.
Yeah. And Jean takes on this black and gray turtleneck with a black and yellow jacket.
Well, but it was really late 90s, early 2000s kind of fashion for somebody her age, kind of a thing.
And I will say this, it's one of the best looking Jeans from just looking at her as a woman.
Yeah.
The way she was drawn at the time.
Yeah, she looked like a woman. She looked like she could go out on the street and not wear her, spandex like, oh, I'm gonna.
So, I mean, again, it is a very, she doesn't show a lot of skin in it. It's a very conservative look. It's kind of dull, but I do think during this time, I again like her physical appearance a little bit more. I think then, because even that 90s Jean where I like the costume, it's sometimes hard to relate to her as a person necessarily in that look.
They were trying to be a little too out there, I think.
Yeah.
In some ways.
Yeah. So now I'm going to bring a little bit of lore in here. From what I know, she dies during this period of the new X-Men. I remember reading this. I believe Magneto killed her during this particular run, and she kind of goes away. From what I know, for a long time, until her reappearance as young Jean in the all-new X-Men. Now, in this storyline, the original 5 X-Men are brought from the past into the future because Cyclops has become a dick. And Beast thinks maybe if he shows Cyclops what he used to be, he'll go back to being the Cyclops they kind of all want.
But wah 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 wah
doesn't work. And so now they stay in the future, and for a while they're with the X-Men, and then they go over to Cyclops' team. And I tried to read some of it as best as I could. It's a good book. It really is a good book. It's an interesting read. But it does kind of jump around a little bit. But with that came, when they go to join Cyclops' team, they get new costumes. Yep. Given to them by Magic. Magic creates them. And it's this really cool green and white outfit.
I like that one a lot. I really like that one a lot.
And it's very different. And all of the new X-Men, well, Cyclops was off actually in space with his dad, which that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
But the other 4 got these new looks, and Jean's was, I've really liked it. I like the green and the white. Again, it's a younger, you're talking a teenage Jean now, so it's got a different feel to it, and I really liked that look.
I like that look. I like the, as a woman, I like that it was like a relatable look.
Yeah.
So like that's something I would want to wear if I were a superhero.
Yeah. And that's kind of it for the main line looks. Now there are, like I said, there are going to be several offshoots I'm going to cover, so don't jump on me just yet. I haven't forgotten them yet. So let's talk by and far her most provocative look out, the Black Queen, which is just dominatrix gear.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's a black corset.
And it was so cool to see her dress.
It's a, if you want a BDSM Jean Grey fantasy, you need to see the Black Queen. That's really all there.
Just Google
Black Queen. And, you know, throw a triple X at the end of it. There's plenty of pictures. Trust me.
This is why he needs me here, because him and Tandem would go off and talk about this for 45 minutes.
And it'd be really creepy. So moving on from by and far again, with Jean, you come to expect such a conservative look that this Black Queen is just really out there.
Yeah.
So let's move on to something exceptionally 90s, and that is the Age of Apocalypse look. Again, brief story. This is an alternate universe where Charles Xavier dies young. Right. So the X-Men are never formed, at least not by Xavier. They're formed by Magneto, and Apocalypse destroys the world, essentially. God, it's 90s.
It's painfully 90s. Like the way that they're drawn, like the big thighs, the small waist, the sweetheart cut top with the jacketlet, the caplet jacket, and what looks like shoulder pads, and she's got short hair and it's jutting out all over the place.
Yeah, it's very even going maybe a little 80s. It's very Zool in her facial. You know, she's got the things on her eyes and the spiky hair.
You know, in the early 90s, grunge hadn't hit yet. We were still in that, like, new wave phase. Androgyny was still a huge thing.
There's the word I'm looking for. Androgyny. It's an androgynous look. It's David Bowie. It's David Bowie in a Jean Grey costume.
Yeah, but, I mean, like, you don't want to see David Bowie in a Jean Grey costume.
No, it's not a great look.
Because it's like Ziggy Stardust in David Bowie.
Yes, that's the best way to describe that look. Now, from there, the one thing, that was the first time we saw Jean with short hair.
Yes.
And we would see that again in the Ultimate Universe.
Yes.
Now, the Ultimate Universe is a completely separate timeline from the original Marvel Universe. It's set in the 2000s.
It's the early 2000s, though, when everything was extreme.
Yeah, it was gritty and extreme. It had to be real. It's also where we get Black Nick Fury. If you're ever curious as to why in one movie David Hasselhoff played Nick Fury, and then after that it's Sam Jackson,
that's why.
The Ultimate Universe is why.
Well, I mean, like, the Ultimate Universe has really kind of, I mean, like, that was when I was, 17, 18. I was reading comics, and, as a girl who rocks short hair and has several times in her life, I kind of like seeing Jean Grey with short hair.
Yeah, and she took a very dark turn.
Oh
She
yeah.
was very emotionally unstable in this. I'd say borderline an
Yeah, but
emo-ish
I mean,
character.
again, you have to look at the
Yeah,
cultural influences. Pop punk was huge, emo was huge, and they were trying to relate that the X-Men, who always reach out to the comic countercultures, always trying to look at the kids and try
yeah.
and pull them in,
Um,
create discussions.
as far as the look itself, it is definitely I'd say purposely provocative.
Yeah,
You know, it's
it's a halter top with tight pants, and she's showing her midriff off, and
you know, shortcut on the tank top here, so you're seeing cleavage, rocking her girl abs.
hmm
It is definitely, I'd say, next. I mean, you know, Black Queen is off the chart, but I'd say next to the '70s look, it's
but
probably the most provocative of her.
yeah, besides the Black Queen, I would agree.
Beside the Black Queen, we always have to throw in besides the Black Queen because that one just throws this entire thing
Yeah.
off of whack. Um, so the last one I want to talk about is kind of a little favorite of mine, and it's not really a comic book look. There was a very short-lived show in the late '90s, early 2000s
hmm
called X-Men Evolution,
Yep.
and it took them all back to being high schoolers. And Jean got this somewhere of a mix, even though the all new X-Men look didn't exist
Yeah.
at the time. It's a mix of the all new X-Men and the '90s Jean
So you
Grey.
can almost say that it sort of inspired a little bit of that.
Yeah,
They were trying to tie in and
yeah. I can see it's kind of the first. Well, no, I guess she's worn green historically, but it's just a very different. It's green and black, but it's got that again that head guard. It's not a mask because her face is fully
yeah,
exposed.
but again, they were trying to keep continuity with the other one too.
Right. So it drew a lot of influences, but it was a good look, and I really think honestly it's just an underrated show.
It
I
really
I,
honestly is.
I think that it deserved. It got better, especially as it went on too. So
But again, you're talking about a time when comic books were just coming into their own, and it
yeah.
was just starting to be socially acceptable for us to come out of the lockers they had stuff us in.
Couldn't stuff me in a locker, baby.
Yeah, dude, I got
It's
stuffed in a lot of lockers.
one of the advantages of being hybrid class. I played football, and I'm a nerd. I was my own worst enemy.
I was just really nerdy and like mousy and like tiny.
So that's it for the first
hmm
episode. I hope you liked it.
Yeah, really. I
Uh,
hope you did.
If you did like it, comments help so that we know if you liked it or not. If you have a character, male or female, we are doing both. This is
Yep.
not going to just focus on female superheroes. So if there's another hero or villain, whoever, let us know who you want to see next, and we'll talk about their different looks. Also, if I missed anything, if there's a Jean Grey look that you absolutely love that I missed, link it below, and I'll tell you what, I'll make up for it in the next episode, and I'll put yours up there.
Yeah,
Now
we'll talk about it.
I'm gonna throw this out there. No fan made looks,
Yep.
and no nudity.
He's already seen it all.
I have, but no nudity. I'm not gonna post it on YouTube. So
We like to keep our show.
yes, we like it.
hmm
We hope you liked it.
Yeah, we do.
So I'm Graham,
And I'm Steph.
and we'll see you next time.